Hello guys, welcome back to New Falmouth as we float our way up towards the house that I built in the last episode. So a quick shout out first of all to all of the new subscribers who have joined the channel basically. Just seen quite a lot of people join since my last episode, which of course was the house, and yeah, that was a bit of a crazy bonkers build to be honest with you, and I wasn't really sure how that was going to be met when I put the video out, but it did seem to capture people's imaginations, and I must just thank everybody that left comments and positive feedback for this build. It was a lot of fun to do, and yeah, I'd love to see someone else have a go at building their own house in the game as well, because I think it's a really kind of cool thing to do and quite a challenge as well to try and undertake. But yeah, we've picked up quite a few new people on the way, and as I say, a very warm welcome to everyone. If you're new to the channel, then I do city building and city skylines, quite detailed work, and quite painstakingly, torturously long amounts of time I spend trying to build stuff in this game, but yeah, hopefully you will find my content interesting. I don't do things the easy way, let's just say that. I do like to make a bit of a meal out of stuff, and yeah, that seems to be the way I kind of work, but it suits me, and you know, I'm not in any particular rush. So if you've got a bit of time and you want to see me mess about with stuff in City Skylines, then you have arrived at the right place. So here we are, floating in over what will become downtown New Falmouth, and that was the plan originally this episode, to try and start work on the downtown, but as usual I decided to do something different, which was the waterfront instead. So as you can see, I've put down a few little piers and areas of kind of reclaimed land there, and the idea is to start building bits and pieces onto those. The first thing I did is move the ferry terminal building out the way, because that's quite a big building which I didn't really want to be sort of slap bang in the middle of the waterfront here. And I've started adding in a few little buildings. I wasn't quite sure where to go with this, but I wanted a big kind of car park on the waterfront there, and obviously this is kind of like a 1970s era building, I guess. And I thought, well, if you've got a big building like this on the waterfront, which is not exactly the prettiest looking structure, then maybe the city council decided to reclad it. So that's actually what I end up doing. I actually end up recladding this building in a kind of colourful rainbow, with colourful sort of rainbow coloured fins, which you will see in a minute. So I'm trying to almost suggest a little story here, that possibly the city has undergone various changes and various kind of like redevelopments over the years, and this is one of those first kind of big redevelopments, because I'm guessing this area here would have been developed during the 1970s, 1980s, and would have originally replaced what was a kind of fishing harbour area here. But as is the case with many cities during this period of time, a lot of the industries closed down, and vast areas of the city were just laid as, you know, empty kind of abandoned lots So I thought, well, it would be quite interesting if this area was basically redeveloped as some kind of commercial development, a little bit like something like the Renaissance Centre in Detroit, something like that, but a much smaller scale version of that. And the car park was kind of jumping off point for me, then starting to add in some other buildings like this larger office building. I didn't want it too big, although this is pretty large and is already now the largest building in the city. And it looks a bit strange there, sort of stuck out in the middle of the water, but actually it ends up, I think, sitting in here quite nicely, because I wanted this, as I say, this sort of development here to really be a sort of, it was kind of like a catalyst to redevelop a lot of the waterfront of New Falmouth. And originally possibly wasn't very successful in doing that, and it may have been during the sort of early part of this century that this area underwent a further redevelopment, which is when you have a little kind of public park and sort of public space with cafes and things. All this was built, as well as things like recladding the car park there and just making it a lot more kind of user friendly, because it's prime real estate. This, you know, it's slap bang on the middle of the waterfront, right by the water, right next to downtown, or what will become downtown. So yeah, quite a sort of popular spot that this eventually turns out to be, I think. But that's really what I'm trying to do here, is almost suggest that this area has undergone changes over the years, which is something that's quite cool and you can do with city skylines. So this is certainly a lot more modern an area compared to what I've built so far in the city. I've pretty much been going down a more kind of historical route so far. I've built the old town, of course, and the historical harbour, waterfront district with the old sort of fishing piers and things, and fish market and so forth. So I've been pretty much kind of staying to quite a historical builds, but this is the first proper modern sort of build that I'm undertaking, and it will be the kind of jumping off point, I think, for downtown, which I'm hoping to start in the next episode. And I've been putting it off, but I think it's got to a stage now where with this part complete, the main waterfront complete, it feels probably the right time to actually start work on downtown. Because when I start to put the bigger buildings in, you know, the bigger sort of landmark buildings in, then that's really going to start to change the kind of vibe of the city, I think, and almost get across more its kind of character, which I think will be quite an interesting thing to see how it develops. But it's also a little bit daunting, because once you start adding bigger buildings in, then you can dramatically change how the city looks. But so far with what I'm doing here today, I'm pretty pleased with how this all turns out. It looks a bit weird at the moment. That building, as I say, looks a bit kind of odd sitting out on the water there. But I start to work out as I build this what I'm going to be, how I'm going to be adding all these little details and bringing all these different areas together. So here I'm putting in a kind of I don't know what you call it. It's like a concrete kind of column section just at the bottom of the building's columns there, just to protect it from boats and things. And then I start to plan out a marina. I didn't really have any kind of overall plan for this area at all. I literally just started plonking stuff down and seeing how it looked. And usually I do try and plan it out a little bit better than this, but it all seemed to come together at the end, which is good. But at this stage I'm just sort of putting down a few little piers and kind of trying to make a kind of marina area. what I'm doing here now is just adding these little railings onto the pier or the breakwater. And actually, if you can convert them in PO, I discovered that just by moving them slightly, you can actually make them curve around this circle here. So very, very, very simple, but actually really effective once you sort of do that and plonk it in. It just gives it a bit more detail and just makes it look that much more realistic without, spending a huge amount of time. So now I'm starting to work out what this marina is going to look like, and I always quite enjoy doing these marinas. I've done quite a few actually in this city, and I'll probably do quite a few more before it's finished. But they are a really, really good way of getting a bit of detail onto your waterfronts. Boats are always good anyway, putting boats in. And, cities that are by the sea will often have lots of marinas, lots of yachts and things. So you can never have too many of these areas. I think they just look really good in the game as well. Just putting these in. Very simple, nothing complicated about this, but by putting a few little extra details here and there, you can just make the whole thing just pop that much better. I think it just looks quite nice. And this is a billboard that I'm making just as a kind of got a bit sidetracked here, I think, just adding this in. But it's quite nice to do your own billboards if you can. It takes a bit of practice with the old PO there, but they can come out quite nice, and it gives your city a little bit more individuality, let's say. And now I'm putting in some, I don't know what these are called, sort of tessellated pyramidal breakwater kind of structures, which look really good. And I wanted to use these for a long time, and I thought I'd use them here. It seemed to be the right kind of spot to plonk them in. I'm not doing too many of them, just putting them in here and there, but I think they help to just break up the waterfront a little bit better. Now this area here is a little playground which I'm putting in, and again it's just to suggest that this area has been redeveloped recently. So what would have originally just been a kind of concrete area has now been given over to kind of public use, which is always nice. And I think it's basically just suggesting that the city has undergone a few more recent redevelopments, let's say. And I might even suggest that this is ongoing by doing a few more kind of building sites and things here and there. We'll have to see. But the next part of this area is the cruise ship terminal. So the first thing is I put this big building down, which I'm not sure of what this is. I think it's just a sort of office building, but I'm using this as the kind of cruise ship terminal itself. I lowered it quite significantly because I didn't want it looking too big there on the front. And now I'm adding a lot of rooftop detail, and this is just something that I've been doing recently, particularly with larger buildings that have large roofs that are visible, because so much of the time in the game you'll be viewing your city from above, and you'll see these big buildings and these big roofs, and a lot of the time, although the models are fantastic, sometimes the roofs can be almost a bit bare. So I'm actually adding some extra detail in to try and break up that kind of bareness and give it a bit more, again, a little bit more individuality and a little bit more interest. And I think there's no harm in doing that. It takes a bit longer because obviously I'm having to, do a lot more work, as you can see. But you can get some quite nice results, and it can make it look a little bit more realistic, let's say. So that's really what I'm kind of focusing on here. fences are actually I think they're, I can't actually remember what, they're just a fence, but I again converted those in PO and changed the colour, and again it just creates a slightly more unusual fence that you don't usually see in the game. So I do that a lot. I try and change the colour of stuff, make it look a bit different, and it's a really good way of changing it up a bit, you know, mixing it up, mixing the details up, and making your city a little bit more individual. Now the last part of this build is this final kind of section here of a few piers. Again, I'm putting a little restaurant down, which is always nice to do, put some tables and picnic benches and things in. And I also decide that what I really need on the waterfront here is a kind of a Ferris wheel or a little kind of amusement park type place. I mean, in the end it's really just the Ferris wheel itself, but this was just something that kind of just came along on its own really. I just had this area here where the path's going in, and I wasn't quite sure what to do with this. Even at this point I wasn't really sure what I was doing, but it just seemed a bit bare, and in the end I decided best thing to do is to put a Ferris wheel in the middle. So that's what I do, which is slightly random, but it seems to work, and especially because I've got these cafes and things here. It's quite a nice, there we go, there's the Ferris wheel, quite a nice little area here next to the cruise ship terminal. So yeah, it's all about just trying to breathe some life into the waterfront, and I think generally it's come out pretty well. And here we are, here's the cruise ship itself going in. So you will see in a minute the cinematics. I'm gonna bid you all farewell now. I've been talking far too much as usual, so I'm gonna leave you with the cinematics, and bon voyage until next time, when hopefully I'll be getting down to working on the downtown. So until next time, I shall leave you with these lovely views on the waterfront, and see you next time.